Hello everyone and welcome to episode 35 of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. Today I'm delighted to be joined in conversation by the amazing Elizabeth Glenn-Copeland. Having dedicated her life to exploring how eco-activism can be weaved into artistic practice in an effort to facilitate societal change, she draws on myth, indigenous wisdom and collaborations with science through a lens of current events, utilising storytelling, song and poetry to convey powerful messages that speak straight to our souls. In this inspiring episode, she shares her incredible poetry, and together we weave a beautiful message of active hope for you all in these times of adversity. We discuss the impact of eco-anxiety, low-grade fear and complex PTSD that is affecting so many of us who are deeply connected to the environment, and how importantly we need not be blinded or discouraged by the popular climate doomerism, because when we look beyond this narrative we will discover millions of people around the world already doing amazing things. Elizabeth poignantly encourages us to not falter and give up, but to remember that the story is still being written. The ending is not yet determined, that we all have the ability to engage in active hope and come together with collective strength to reframe how we vision ourselves into the world and forge new ways that nurture the earth and ourselves. To begin, Elizabeth shares with us a beautiful excerpt from her incredible poetic odyssey, Daring to Hope at the Cliff's Edge, Pangaea's Dream Remembered.
I awoke this morning to news of children in cages, centuries-old rages rising up. Sirens scream, the Arctic burns, and an old growth forest is cut down to make toilet paper. Markets thrive while species die, while the planet's oceans heat and rise, heat and rise, heat and rise. Against this rising tide of mainstream malevolence, can anything I say or do matter? In the arched dome of a blue-black sky, stars sing in the language of light, a recitative of wonder. O great dreamer, who art our eternal mother, hallowed be thy flame. Thy rapture come, thy songs be sung in joy at thy simple wonder. Give us this day our daily breath, and forgive us our hubris, as we forgive that which makes us complicit. And lead us not into further benumbment, but deliver us from extinction. For thine is the history, the mystery, and the moral, forever and ever and ever. And so it is. And so it is.
Welcome, Elizabeth, and thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Nurtured by Nature podcast.
Thank you, Fiona.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so excited to finally get the chance to speak to you. We connected a while ago, and I've spent some time looking at your amazing books and offerings, so I'm really, really excited for this conversation. But to get us started, I always just ask my guests to share a little bit about their nature story and just really how nature has perhaps been a part of your life and if that's changed or evolved or how it might have inspired you over time. So if there's anything you'd like to share to get us started, that'd be lovely.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. Before I start, I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing in the world.
Oh,
It's so important what people like you are offering so that, we can stay in a state of relative balance as we face the major difficulties that are with us in our world right now. So
oh.
bless you for
Oh,
that.
thank you, Elizabeth. That means a lot. Yes, it is a really challenging time, and I think it's just so important to have a platform where people can come together and I can allow amazing people like you to share their voice and wisdom with everyone who might not have immediately come across you. So it's my pleasure to do it and be of service to the earth at this time.
Yes, yes, Gaia is calling and we need to answer her call. So my nature story. All right. So I'm in my late 60s. So, there's a few little chapters here. I won't tell them all, but I have certainly long had a passion for engaging with, communicating with the animate world that began in childhood in the field behind my house.
Oh, wow.
It was an incredible place of all things sensory, the smells of nature, the sounds of insects and birds and little critters running through the grass, and all of the various wildflowers. And in that field, there was an old willow tree that had been cut in half by lightning.
Oh, wow.
And so part of her body stretched over a running creek. And
Wow.
it allowed me and a lot of the other little children who played in that field, we would cross over the creek on the one part of the willow and crawl up into her body. And I have to be honest and say that that willow tree, in some ways, mothered me in
Mm.
ways I didn't get in
Yeah,
in the human world.
yeah,
And though we did not communicate in words, obviously there was something about her presence
yeah,
which helped me deal with some of the things in my childhood that were quite difficult. So with her, I got into this habit of really speaking and feeling that I was held in the arms of this
yeah,
willow tree and therefore in the larger world of nature. So this
yeah.
carried on for me during my childhood. At the age of 17, I ran away from home and I ran out to Vancouver Island, which, for those of you that know it, is probably one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And I lived in a cabin that I could leave the cabin, and within a 10-minute walk, I could be right in the heart of an old growth rainforest.
Oh, amazing.
And for
Wow.
anyone who has not been in an old growth forest, and I know more and more of us are not having that opportunity, it is a place where if you are at all sensitive, you do understand that we are little brother and little sister in creation, and there is this magnificent world of sensory intelligence that is
Yeah.
there for us. It was also during that time that I read the book Silent Spring by Rachel
Okay.
Carson
Okay. Yeah.
and came to understand what the world of big industry was doing to the natural world. And that was the birth for me of the activist in me.
Yeah.
Um, in my 20s, my activism and my work as a theater artist were very separate. But in my 30s, when I became a young mother and the activism became even more important, I began to look for ways to weave my activism into my artistic practice.
Yeah.
Because art, as the poet Emily Dickinson says, she says, tell the truth, but tell it slant,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Art sometimes has a way of sneaking its way into our
Yeah.
hearts and minds and cells in a way that just mere information can't.
Yeah. It's something that I think is often not appreciated in society is just the amazing power of the creatives, whether that, in all its forms. I mean,
Yes.
you've been involved in lots of forms of creativity and art, but it does have this way of just communicating with people in a way that's, I suppose, less confrontational, isn't it? It can carry the heavier messages,
Yes.
but in a way that is softer and that people can open to and sort of grow with, rather than it sort of close. Because sometimes it can be quite confrontational, this discussion about the climate, whereas art just has this way to sort of just bridge between the sort of the opposite
Yes.
ideas, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So fast forward, several decades, and I was offered this writing residency at the Joggins Fossil Institute. And this is a UNESCO World Heritage Site on the mighty Bay of Fundy.
Oh,
The Bay of Fundy has the most powerful tides in the world.
yeah,
And so I wanted to go to the 350 million year old rock at Joggins and just say, at this time of eco collapse, at this time when I am struggling to deal with my own eco despair, having been an activist all this time and
yeah,
seeing how little has been done in the past 40 plus years.
yeah,
What is my part here? And does anything I do, can it really matter? And the cliffs did indeed, over a period of a year, have some guidance for me. And that's what came through in the book.
yeah. Which we had a lovely excerpt from at the start, but I have to say I'd not heard of the Bay of Fundy until I met you, and I went and looked it up, and it is just an absolutely incredible place. And like you were saying, I think you were saying about the tidal, it has the highest tidal difference anywhere in the world. And I think there was amazing fact, something like 100 billion tons of water flows into and out of the bay every 12 hours. So it's just this
Yes,
amazing melting pot, and a hugely important site for both marine life, and also because of the high difference in the tides, you've got amazing mud flats and areas for wildlife as well. So I'm imagining an incredibly inspiring place to connect with nature in its real just might and rawness and
yes,
just
yes,
yeah,
yes. It's 150 billion tons of water
yeah,
flows in and out twice a day.
yeah,
It's a very, very powerful place to be, and I encourage anyone who gets a chance to visit
yeah,
that site.
yeah,
Yeah.
just absolutely just amazing. Just I guess the energy there must just be incredible as a result of that. So an amazing place to have the opportunity to take your questions to Mother Earth of what can we do, because I think that's really the main question that so many of us sit with, that care about the environment. And like you said, we've sat sort of on the sidelines feeling this sort of sense of powerless. Perhaps we've been trying to do things in our own way. Like you said,
Yes.
you were an activist yourself, but just not seeing like the momentum that's needed. And there is this sense of powerlessness that you went with. And this was quite recently as well, wasn't it? I think was it 2018 that you had your residency?
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
very much still the energy that we're still sitting with, isn't it, of what you felt at that time.
Yes. Yeah. Can I share a little poem from the book
Yes, please, that'd be lovely.
that
That'd
I
be
think
lovely.
might seem appropriate at this point? Because one of the things when I began this residency, there was a part of me that thought, who the heck do I think I am to
Yeah.
go and have a conversation with the majesty of this stone mother here? And so I think the first 3 or 4 months of the residency was me going, just get over yourself, Elizabeth. All right. Just go and ask, right? You've learned from all of your teachers. I've been studying the work of Robin Wall Kimmerer. It's like, these are your teachers. Just listen. What do they have to say? So this was a poem that came out earlier on in the book. Um, so here we go. It is mid-morning, and as the winds begin to rise, the mighty Fundy shifts and sighs as 150 billion tons of water, heavy with salt, ebbs and flows in common time. Will I ever learn the subtle shifts in air and water that signal the turning of the tides? In my pocket, my iPhone buzzes. I've got notifications. I block out all stimuli. The hop, skip, hop of the wild sponge rolling down the beach, the laughter of the gulls as they wheel and dip in the gray-blue sky, the full-bodied bouquet of seaweed and salt and fertile decay. Instead, I stare at the screen, hoping to receive tidings of great joy, but instead see that someone I don't know has responded to a comment that someone else I don't know has commented on, and a message that someone I wish I didn't know has tagged me on. Or is it in?
Yeah.
Whatever. Scrolling down, pictures of Rohingya Muslims fleeing terror. The President of the United States throwing paper towels to hurricane victims. Kim showing off her new manicure to Kanye. I sweat shame. High on the cliff's edge, drying goldenrod and saffron-colored grass waltz in the breeze. Anxious to accelerate accomplishment, I join in the dance, not a waltz or a sway or a two-step, but a furious fandango, executed in the style of highly successful white people who value speed over all. My heart a dervish, my monkey mind whirling in 100 different directions. I clap, step, and skip my way over slippery stones, looking, but not seeing, hearing, but not listening, dancing faster and faster and faster until my breath comes in scorching gasps. Falcon cries high overhead, her marigold eyes flashing fire. Gee, gee, gee. Wisdom from Rilke slows me. Only when we tarry do we touch the holy. Turning to face the cliffs, I kneel on stony sand. A chattering fugue of fossil seekers moves onto the beach. A little girl sees me kneeling and, probably thinking me an old woman beached, runs to my aid. As she helps me to stand, she sings, "The more we stick together, 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 the more we stick together, the happier we'll be." Out of the mouths of babes. Can it really be that simple?
Oh, that's just goodness. Just the way you write is just so captivating, Elizabeth. There's so much from that that is just important to listen and witness, and I think there is so much. I mean, your sort of mention earlier on of the notifications, and that's a really a reference to how busy our lives are and how difficult it is, even when you have set the intention to be here with the cliffs, to actually follow that through and really sit in silence and connection with the natural world. And it is a difficult a difficult thing for us
Yes.
to do, and I think possibly one of the greatest challenges of our times actually is to find our way out of that sort of maze that we've made for ourselves of connection, but not connecting with what's really there and important. But But
Yeah, I mean, definitely the whole issue with cell phones. I mean, I know one of the things we wanted to talk about was, how do we actually create hope
yeah,
and active hope where we
yeah.
can make a difference. And there was a playwright, and I wish I could remember his name, but he wrote a play back in the 90s based on George Orwell's 1984.
Okay.
And in the play, people are really married to their cell phones as if that's their primary relationship. So
Yeah,
we're all staring at our screens and we're not
yeah,
connecting with each other or being in reciprocity with the living world. And one of the lines in the play goes something like, the people will not revolt. They will not look up from their screens long enough to
yeah,
see what's happening.
yeah,
So when we're staring at these screens, we do sometimes feel like we are in connection,
yeah.
but it's not a connection that can sustain us.
No, no,
It's a
that's
connection that raises our dopamine levels for a short period of time and we feel a little bit better, but it is not real connection. So one of the strategies I encourage in my workshops is to, have times in your day when you turn that cell phone off and you do not look
yeah,
unless you're going to get a message from your daughter or your mother or something that's urgent. You just don't look at it. And that was part of what I had to come to terms with during that year. It's like, don't
yeah.
take your cell phone out with you onto the beach.
It's I mean, I mean, I'm a few years younger than you, but
A
I grew
few,
up
yes.
we didn't have cell phones. Like, I mean, we started to get them sort of my last years of school. But then they were the very basic, it was like a text message and a phone
Yes.
call. It was actually, a phone, and they didn't have the internet on them. So there was even then less connection than there is now. And it is really, it's amazing how quickly they have just completely like sort of dominated our life and our experience. And I find, like you, that actually it's almost a false connection, isn't it? It's sort of you feel, you kind of hide behind it. Oh, I'm on, a social media platform and I can put a post up and everyone can see what I'm doing, and I'm keeping in contact. But I kind of, I miss as well the times when you used to phone people and you talk to them, or you'd write letters to them, or even better, you'd go and see them and spend time with them. And I mean, there are amazing benefits to technology,
Yes.
obviously, like us being here now and being able to see and experience and know much more of what's going around. But I think it has had a huge impact on people's mental health as well, hasn't it? And I think that's something that you refer to as well, is this sense of eco-anxiety that everyone is
Yes.
struggling with. And we're sort of, what we experience through these platforms is shaped and tailored, and it does sort of feed into this notion of despair and sort of doom and gloom. And it's not to say that you can't be sort of your rose tinted glasses. There is
Yes.
stuff going on, and we do need to pay attention, but at the same time it's coming at it with that element, like you said, of active hope is really important for the people that care about it, so that we can find our way through this eco anxiety and manage to be able to be there to support the earth. I think is really um a big challenge for us. And I think that's a lot of your work offers beautiful ways for people to find the way to deal with eco anxiety, but not feel powerless, to begin to feel like they are empowered and able to do something and contribute.
Yeah, I think the important thing, there's a few things in what you said there, Fiona, that I want to touch on. One is that it's important that we do not rely on what we see on Facebook and Instagram and even in mainstream media for the news of what is happening in the world. There are millions of people around the world doing amazing
Yeah,
things for the earth,
yeah,
powerful movements. And you and I met through the
yeah,
work of Mary Reynolds and the
yeah,
rewilding movement. That is a powerful movement. We don't read about the rewilding movement. We don't read about regenerative economics. We don't read about organizations that are recreating habitat, that are recreating, helping the topsoil to survive. We don't read about these in mainstream media. So it becomes very easy for us to be deeply discouraged when we just, because the truth is, as the masses are much more easily controlled when we are frightened.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So it serves a larger purpose for us to stay in this kind of low grade fear.
Yeah.
I really believe that most of us are suffering from a kind of low grade complex PTSD that relates to what's happening on the planet with the climate crisis, with the rise of the right, with the collapses of the economies. So what do we do in order to deal with that? I think the first thing is to remember that these phytochemicals that are firing off, that create this anxiety, are part of the intelligence that nature imbued in us in order for us to survive, right? Human beings would not have adapted in those first many hundreds of thousands of years before recorded history began if we did not have these phytochemicals.
Yeah.
We have to understand that the bias of the brain is such, from an evolutionary perspective, that it tilts in a negative direction, right? So meaning the good experiences sometimes roll off like Teflon.
Yeah.
And here I'm kind of paraphrasing from an amazing book called The Buddha Brain, which I would highly recommend everyone reads. But bad experiences stick. And the purpose of this, again, it's an evolutionary purpose. Back in the day, we really needed to remember where the snake pit was, where the bear's den was, where the dangerous other people were, where the dangerous creatures were, that served an evolutionary purpose, which now we have to be aware of and sort of know it is trying to warn us of danger, and there is danger. We have to acknowledge the danger, but then not live unconsciously in that place of low grade fear.
Yeah.
Because when we do that, our immune systems are weakened and we are actually cut off from our essential human collective power.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's so much in that. I mean, a lot of what I've done over the years has this notion of trauma. For a long time, I think PTSD was really sort of presented to people as it was something that people who'd been through something really horrific. It was that, it was the soldiers at war. It was people who'd survived horrific accidents. It was something that was sort of reserved almost for these really horrendous experiences. But actually, the more I've looked into it, is the fact that it's actually can be just these culmination of tiny, little sort of trauma. They like to say trauma with a big T and trauma with a small t, and it's like the collective of all of these small t traumas actually just get to the point that you kind of reach saturation and you can't cope, and then you find yourself in this PTSD. And I think it is a huge thing for our society, and I think like you say, particularly people who are attuned to the natural world as well are quite often more empathetic type people. They're a bit more sensitive, so they're more likely to pick up on this collective trauma as well that we're all experiencing. And it's just, and that's, for me, that was part of my podcast, was the flip side of that, how being in nature can actually support us to move through this trauma. And then we can sort of feed back to nature, because as we become healthier and more whole in ourselves, we are part of nature. We are all connected. And so by caring for ourselves, dealing with our own trauma, we become stronger and healthier, and we're able to to feed back to the natural world. So it's this beautiful relationship and circular reciprocity again, isn't it? But I do love your work, and your partners, you and your partner have done some amazing songs as well, which I think the resonance of what you do just speaks to everyone who might be sitting in that place of actually just overwhelm, and that they care so deeply and they don't know how to move forward. And I really would just encourage them to listen to some of the words that you've written and the songs that you and your partner have created and sung together for
Yeah.
inspiration.
And I want to stress here that our strength is in the collective,
Yeah,
right? I think we almost got in the first few years of the pandemic that the phrase "we are one" is
yeah,
not some flaky new age saying, that we are actually connected.
yeah,
We know from the study of somatics that if our nervous systems are dysregulated, if we can be in the presence of other people whose nervous systems are not dysregulated, we can find our way back to some kind of place of balance,
yeah,
right? So resolving our traumas is not, in this case, when we're talking about the climate crisis, it's not an individual thing. And this is what, a lot of modern psychiatry would have us believe, your eco anxiety is yours. It's like, we're all
yep,
struggling with this. So how do we get together to process it, to feel it, right? Because we do need to feel it. I think one of the things that many of us do is we try to skip over the grief part.
yep, yep, yeah,
None of us would think it is intelligent if our mother dies that we would say, oh, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm feeling really positive. So when we hear that an ecosystem has collapsed, maybe we sit with those people who feel that kind of, pain in the way we do, and we sit and we have a good week. My husband and I do this on a very regular basis.
yeah,
So we can't skip the grief part.
yeah,
We are not honoring the earth by staying in a state of false positivity. And to find more supports around this, I always direct people to the work of Diana Beresford Kroger, the eco-Buddhist philosopher Joanna Macy, the amazing indigenous environmental biologist Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer, right? There are stages to shift our consciousness so that we can actually be present and
yeah,
make a difference. And one of them is honoring our pain.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then one of them is really like, Robin Wall Kimmerer, she says this so beautifully, and I'm paraphrasing, so I hope I don't muck up what she said, but she says, despite her suffering, Mother Earth is still giving us food, giving us air to breathe, water to drink, and creating immense beauty.
yeah,
So she said, Mother Earth is giving me joy. So it is my responsibility, my calling to give joy back to her.
yeah,
Right? So we need to feel the pain, but we also need to stay engaged with the living world because she is staying engaged with us.
yeah.
I
It's
had a dream a few years ago where I was feeling really, really low, and I went to sleep and I said to the world of spirit, I said, please, please, I need some encouragement. And when I woke up that next morning, it was like a little voice was whispering in my ear, and it said, don't give up. We have things up our sleeves that your lot know nothing about. Keep the faith.
yeah,
Don't give up.
yeah,
So if your listeners take anything from this is the story is still being written. Nothing is preordained. Many things are difficult, yes, but there is more to come in this story. Stay in the game, keep your part, find others of like mind.
yeah. The journey is far from over. So yeah,
Yes,
the ending hasn't yet been written, as they say.
that's
So
right. And we are writing it.
yeah,
And let's not give our power away to the behemoths of the power mongers. And let's
yeah.
stay in the game here.
No,
Yeah.
I've just well, I've got goosebumps listening to that because that's really what I stand for as well. Elizabeth, is just this belief that, it's not that there isn't awful things and it isn't that there aren't challenges that we're going to have to face, but it's the strength of community, the power of coming together and realizing that, we all have a part to play. And sometimes, I mean, something that people used to say a lot, and I used to hear being said a lot, was like, what difference can I make? I'm just one person. And
Yes.
I would always feel like, yeah, but it's like we're all just one person in some respects, but it's actually like, everyone just doing little things and then encouraging others to do little things, and you have this amazing ripple effect, and you get this, it's like that snowball rolling downhill, isn't it? It starts off this little snowball, and as it picks up momentum, it picks up more snow, and then suddenly you've got something that can actually make a difference and have an impact. And yeah, it just is amazing, the power of community. And I love that's really a core ethos for you as well, is coming together, bringing people together, reminding people that there are others out there that care and that we can do things together.
Yes, and to remember that hope is a verb.
Yeah.
Hope is a verb. It's about, there's an active element. And I want to say this because I remember early in the days of young Greta Thunberg, such an incredibly courageous young person and still doing her thing. She said, I'm not interested in your hope. And of course, what she was referring to was those of us in dominant culture who are sitting here sipping our tea, reading our newspapers and going, well, I still feel very hopeful.
Yeah.
Right? The kind of hope that I'm talking about here is not a feeling.
Yeah.
It is a verb. It requires action.
Yeah.
And hope is a practice.
Yeah.
And I want to stress this around not only whatever work we do externally in the world, but our internal work to keep our nervous systems regulated. We do need, in this day and time, some kind of calming practice that we do on a daily basis. So whether that's you have a writing practice, a meditation practice, a mindfulness practice. I personally have a combination of a writing practice and I'm a practicing Buddhist. It doesn't matter what it is, it's
Yeah.
something that you do on a daily basis that is going to keep your nervous system regulated. Because
Yeah.
without a regulated nervous system, we have no power. And when we feel dysregulated, it's okay to reach out to other people and say, I'm having a really bad day. Can you help me out?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think,
so
yeah, I mean, you touched a little bit on it, the pandemic as well. And I think one of the things as well that came from that was, I mean, you mentioned the notion that actually like we are one, but it was actually, the physical feeling of being isolated as well for a lot of people was suddenly, I think I've seen a lot of people have felt actually they've realized how much they were lacking community, and obviously the pandemic and lockdowns really sort of shone a light on that. And I've seen since like a real sort of regeneration of this need for actually time together as well. And the that, and for some people that can be their practice as well, can't it? These, like you mentioned about grief, coming together in that shared space to sit and process, to support each other, so that you can then move through these feelings rather than becoming sort of embedded and stuck in them.
yes, yes, it's the stuckness that does disempower us ultimately
Yeah.
and leads many to feel like, oh well, I'll just go out and do some more shopping because nothing that I do matters. Nothing could be further from the truth. The dominant culture would prefer you to think that because we are easily controlled when we feel powerless.
Yeah.
When the pandemic came, um, I remembered, in my 20s reading works by scientists who said, if we continue with the level of cutting down, forests and fields and filling in marshlands, we're going to come upon a time when viruses will start to jump species. And of course, that's what happened with
Yeah.
COVID and the SARS epidemic, which nobody thought much of in the early 90s, right? That was kind of the warning sign. So when when COVID came, for me, I thought, okay, if everything is my teacher, what is COVID saying to me here? And I really felt like COVID was saying, we've been trying, we in the natural world, we've been trying to get your attention. We have been trying to get your attention. We've been trying to get your attention. You in the Western world are not paying attention. So here I am. I am highly adaptable. I am super smart. You are too. So get with the program.
Yeah.
So I didn't view the COVID virus as some great, I almost see it as some kind of beneficent, but a heavy-handed teacher. And right now,
A messenger almost.
Yeah, saying, wake up. I mean, Corona was a second century saint who died a martyr's death in the waning days of the golden age of the Roman Empire. And some people thought of this as, Corona as the saint of pandemics. But in one of my poems, I said, in truth, she is the saint of treasure hunters. And though there will be death in these times, maybe even my own, there are treasures aplenty to be found by those with eyes to see, ears to hear, the willingness to open to the subtle instincts of the instinctive collective psyche, not easily accessed in this dizzying merry-go-round world. And for anybody that's interested, you can find that whole poem. I did a little poem, a grouping of poems that is in Resilience magazine. I'll make sure I send you that link so that you can.
That'd be lovely. Yeah, we're gonna there's probably gonna be lots of links.
Lots of links
from this episode, because Elizabeth and her partner Beverly have got so many things that we can share. But
we've got lots of links internally too to offer you, and we want to be of service. We're here to be of service and support.
Yeah, and
so that's
you're gonna have some, is it writing workshops that you're gonna have coming up soon?
Yes.
Yeah.
Early in the pandemic, I began to offer a series of writing workshops to help people to develop the skills to actually create active hope in their lives and to deal with their eco-anxiety and to connect with communities of other people. In the last few years, we've had to move too many times to run those workshops, but I'm going to be starting another series in the spring. So I know Fiona's going to put the link to my Daring to Hope at the Cliff's Edge Facebook page. So if you want to connect up with me there, then we can, I'll be posting.
People can find out as and when they become available, and they can get involved if they want to. If they follow you on Facebook, you'll update them with all the details.
Yes, and I think there's also, I think you have the link for my website, which is woefully out of date. But I think there's also a link to my email there. So I'm happy to hear from people.
And there'll be a link to your amazing book as well, Daring to Hope at the Cliff's Edge, which I feel like we should give a bit more attention to, because it is incredible. And well, I mean, just even the name Daring to Hope is just a powerful statement for our time, isn't it? Really, it's what we all need to remember is to dare to hope.
Yeah, and so the full title is Daring to Hope at the Cliff's Edge, Pangea's Dream Remembered. And of course, what is Pangea? Let me explain. So Pangea is the Greek word for one earth. Pangea is also the name of the supercontinent that contained most of the world's land masses during the Carboniferous area, and that was 300 to 400 million years ago. So during that time, most of the land masses were the continents as we know them were part of one large land mass. And where I am right now was actually right along the equator. Wow. So it was in contemplation of this era, which I did with some incredible scientific and poetic minds, that I researched and wrote this book. So Pangea was the time on Earth when Earth was experimenting with creating life on land, right? There had been lots of life in the water, but now it was experimenting, the brilliance of life, experimenting with what if I create these kind of things? And in part of the book is we actually do a magical journey back to Earth Age Pangea.
Oh, wow.
I
Yeah.
fly back there on the back of a dragonfly. So the dragonfly, of course, is a symbol of transformation. So dragonfly is an important character in the book. We fly back into that Carboniferous area and get a little talking to by the Stone Mother.
I am.
Yes.
I think, I mean, you mentioned there, but the thing I love is how you work with scientists and just it's multidisciplinary, isn't it?
Yes.
You're the artist that brings it together and sort of connects these amazing threads, but there is just that, there is so much that all different people can offer, isn't there? And that's one of the things I love about the creatives and the art activists, is because they do have this amazing ability to sort of be this hub to bring everything together and make it accessible for people as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's a bit of a new movement where artists and scientists are seeing we're seeing our commonality more. We're seeing that we both are coming from kind of insane levels of curiosity
Yeah.
and then coming from that and co-creating together. So during the writing of this particular book, I got to work with an amazing paleontologist and an anthropologist, um, an academic who her specialty is indigenous ways of knowing. She's a Cree Métis scholar.
Oh, wow.
Dr. Paulette Steve, she's turning the world of anthropology on its ear, and I'm loving what she's doing. So I was blessed to work with these people on this project.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
it's so amazing, isn't it? I think science has been dealt a bad hand in many respects as well, but it's been seen as quite dry. It's also, it's not easily accessible to the average person. And I think that's where there's this beauty of collaboration with people like yourself who have the ability to make their passion, because they're hugely passionate people, their passion more accessible to others, basically. And the everyday person is just such a powerful skill to have and offer at this time.
Yes. 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 There's an amazing, I think it's Schumacher College in the UK, which I just desperately would love to attend. I haven't been able to figure out how to do it financially, but if I could, I would. And I believe that the person's name there is Dr. Stephen Harding, and I apologize if I have his name incorrectly, but after years and years of working as a biologist, he said something to the effect of, the language of science cannot convey the wonder I feel when I am in the natural world. So he wrote a play.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think many scientists are coming back to that. They're sort of dismissing that whole, very Western idea that to be a scientist is to be totally dispassionate. Yes, we have to have a level of objectivity in making certain research decisions, yes. But what motivates a biologist is often a sense of deep wonder.
Yeah.
What motivates, like when I listen to astronomers, it's like, oh, they're so full of wonder.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that the wonder is the guiding force,
Yeah.
right?
And it
Yes.
and then that circles us back to love, doesn't it? And love as a
Hmm.
guiding force as well.
Love is a guiding force. Love is a verb. Love is a power that we often think of as something fluffy. I love to, there's a quote here from the evolutionary system scientist David Loy. He talks about Charles Darwin, right? And we all know Charles Darwin
Yeah.
from, his work, and people have misinterpreted his work. And he was very upset at the end of his life that people were interpreting what he said to mean that if you are bigger and stronger and can punch somebody else, then you're the one that gets. He said, that is not what I was referring
It's
to.
the survival of the fittest, I
That
suppose.
survival. He
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
that's not what I was referring to. So he wrote a second book, which not many people know about. It's called The Descent of Man. And in that book, Charles Darwin mentioned the word love no less than 95
Oh,
times,
wow.
along with other feeling words like altruism and sympathy. So, for 160 years, mainstream science chose to ignore Darwin's moral theorizing in favor of a dangerously deadening paradigm that casts the earth in the role of stage on which we, the master species, can enact our dramas.
Yeah.
Right? So, love is, I
Yeah.
believe, Glenn and I believe, is the essential power of the universe. And
Yeah.
to embody love as a force with its ferocity and generosity and compassion. Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's just fascinating about Darwin, and I think there's more and more of these things are coming to light. There's another fantastic author, I think it's Sharon Blackie, and she has an amazing book, and she talks a huge amount as well about how language has shaped our current worldview, and how actually when you trace it back, it traces back to just one or two individuals that had interpreted things in a certain way, and we've allowed our whole vision of the world, our connection to nature, our position as the apex, as it were, above in superiority, just traces back to this, one or two individuals, and it's kind of our society has run with that because it's served various parties' purposes, shall we say, for want of a
Yes,
different
yes.
different worldview. But one of the things you've done is you've spent a lot of time with the sort of indigenous voices and wisdom, and they have a much more sort of harmonizing view to our place as part of nature. And I think for me that's something as well that I've seen a lot of people who are in that sort of negative despair. They believe like the only solution is for humans to kind of wipe ourselves off the earth. Like we need to not be here. We can't, we are just solely the problem and we can't be part of the solution. And we just need to cease to exist. And I think that isn't, for me anyway, that isn't the solution. The solution is us stepping back into realizing that we are nature. Nature is us, and we are
Yes.
part of this world, and we have this amazing role and responsibility to actually just step back into it's remembering, isn't it? I think that's one of the things that you say in your book as well, is that on a cellular level we all hold this awareness of.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. It's all in our DNA, right? We have ancestral relatives that lived on this earth in harmony with the earth for hundreds of thousands of years. For those of us that have white skin, the memories are, a little bit farther back
Yeah.
because we were all conquered, when the Romans came up to Britain, what was it in,
Yeah.
yes, right? So all of those earth-based cultures that were there in what is now, Britain, were taken over by the Romans, and all that earth-based knowing was taken
Yeah.
away. But we all have that in our DNA. And what I want to say to people who say, oh, it'd be better if we were just wiped off the face of the earth. I'm sorry, but that doesn't fly. If tomorrow, and we know, right, we know we're in the middle of the sixth great mass extinction.
Yeah.
We know that if we're gone, the insects could live, but if the insects are gone, we're gone. If all of a sudden all the humans were wiped off the face of the earth tomorrow, then there would be no infrastructure to deal with all of the nuclear planets, sorry, not the nuclear planets, the nuclear plants.
Yeah.
And without water to keep those things cooled, the earth would blow and would be blown off her axis.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing kind of, abuse of privilege to just say, oh, we shouldn't be here. It's like, if you really think you shouldn't be here, then do some work to shut down the nuclear plants and
Yeah.
stop this proliferation of, oh, we're going to have new small scale nuclear to make all our power.
Yeah.
The earth would be blown off her. So take
Yeah.
that one away.
Yeah.
That one doesn't work. the pull for me with indigenous ways of knowing is that I feel that it is our last and very best hope, because there is an understanding within many different ways of indigenous knowing. As Robin Wall Kimmerer says, we are little brother and little sister in creation. And in cutting down the forests and filling in the marshlands, we are killing our teachers.
Yeah.
Right? We are the new ones here. We need to learn from, like in the book, we meet a whip spider. The spiders have been here for over 300 million years. No, so we need to learn from these. These are massive intelligences.
Yeah.
Massive intelligences.
I always think of trees, and I think like people kind of dismiss them and think they're sort of lesser because they don't move. And then I think, well, how amazing is it that they can actually stay stationary in a spot and have everything that they need to thrive, like literally almost at their fingertips, and they can live for thousands of years without moving. And I just think, we just need to reframe like how we vision ourselves into the world, and how like we perceive the all of the other beings and elements of this amazing earth that we're on,
and how trees are connected in community with other trees and other elements through their root systems, and the process of photosynthesis. What a magical process. Oh my gracious goodness. Like, if I ruled the world, not one more tree would be cut down.
No.
Because it's through the photosynthesis that we have this amazing mix, oxygen-rich mix that we can breathe.
Yeah.
So yes, the communities of trees and insects, and they have all of these teachings for us.
Yeah.
Wolves have amazing teachings of how to live in community. Study the lives of wolves, which have been so demonized over the centuries. We have put off much of our own darkness onto wolves.
Yeah.
We need those predators in the systems, or else the systems can't survive.
I think that there's some amazing I think there are articles about when wolves were reintroduced into Yosemite, isn't it? And how actually they realized that they were architects of the ecosystem, and they changed everything from the courses of rivers to, I mean, it was just phenomenal.
Land that had become very deadened, all of a sudden everything came back into balance. And I think they did something similar in Yellowstone Park. It's amazing when you allow the natural world to come back into balance. Paul Hawken has written an amazing book, and I believe it's called Regeneration. This is part of aging. I used to have a brain like a steel trap while I would remember all these things. So I apologize to anybody if I haven't got the references quite correct. But Paul Hawken's new book, and he basically talks about how if we could kind of get out of the way of the earth, she can regenerate in a relatively short period of time. There's an amazing movie called it's called Dirt, the movie. I highly recommend. The first part, you need your Kleenexes to cry about what we've done, but then it shows that if we can just allow the soil to regenerate, it can regenerate fully within 10 years. We're not talking about 200 years down the road. We're talking about within most of our lifetimes. There's a movement in Africa where they've done this to allow places that had become deadened because of deforestation and habitat loss.
Desertification
to rebuild those areas and come back. Oh, it's amazing. And that's, of course, why I love coming back to how you and I met through Mary Reynolds' work. When you can allow even, I mean, that's one thing. If you have a home, if you live in an apartment building and there's a 4x4 little piece of dead grass out there, that can be a mini habitat. Go out and allow some things to grow in there that.
I had a lovely interview recently with a dear friend of Mary's, Claire Ledbetter, who has an amazing place in Ireland called the Irish Forest Garden, and
Oh,
yeah, so she we talked a lot, and one of the things I said actually at the end of my intro to her was when you make space for nature, you'll be surprised at how quickly she steps back in, and I think
yes,
this is a thing that is gives me hope, you know, and it's something that's quite often forgotten. And I think I mean, I was very privileged to have had the opportunity to live in Africa in actually
yes,
the a completely wilderness area, part of the Greater Kruger National Park, where, and one of the things that Africa has is these huge tracts of land that are designated national parks, and they're basically completely reserved for nature and wilderness, and obviously people visit, but it's, there's not communities in them. And yeah, it is. It's very. I mean, I lived in the same place for 5 years. In this, we were very isolated, and just the rhythms of nature and how you see it regenerate itself is just incredible. And I think that's something that perhaps, people in sort of areas of Europe and America just they haven't experienced, so they feel like once an area is devoid of it, sort of hope is gone. But actually,
yes.
nature does just have this tremendous capacity for regeneration, and if we can just give her space and time, she can she can do a lot of the rest herself.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Over the course of our lives, because we're artists and we've moved a lot, and so I've done a lot of rewilding projects in different homes that we've lived in. Often I have to deal with neighbors if I'm in a town or a city going, "Oh, that looks terrible. Oh, you're just lazy. Oh, why don't you cut that? That looks terrible." And I'll tell you just a quick story of the last little town that I lived in where I was allowing a parcel of land out the front of the house to come back. And I could tell by the nature of the soil that the earth had been sprayed with chemicals because
Yeah.
when I put my spade in, there was not an earthworm to be seen. There
Yeah.
was nothing happening in that soil. So I was allowing 2/3 of it to come back. The neighbors were having a hissy fit. There was a local environmental organization who was saying, thank you for doing this. Thank you. And I put a sign saying, habitat renewal.
Yeah.
So one day, a little boy was sitting out front, and a little boy walked by, and he'd obviously walked by with his parents who'd said, "Oh, that person is so lazy. Look at that mess." And so he looked up at me. He was about 9, and he said, "Your lawn is a mess. You need to get out your lawnmower." So I went up to him and I said, "Do you know what I'm doing with this?" And he was taken aback because I think he
Yeah.
thought I was going to be upset. I
Yeah.
said, "I'm making mini habitats. Do you know what that is?" And he looked at me, he shook his head, "No." I said, "Oh, come here. I want to show you. I want to show you." So I took him over and we got down on our bellies. I parted the grasses so he could see all the little ants and the little spiders and all of these little new things popping up in the grass.
Yeah.
And he went, "Wow."
Yeah.
I said, "And you know that our earth is having a hard time right now." He said, "Yeah, and why aren't the adults doing anything?" And I said, "Right. So this is why I'm doing this." Oh, oh. So I created this relationship with this little boy, and his parents didn't give me the same dirty looks the next time they walked by. I don't know that they ever let their lawns go, but um, it you have to be willing sometimes to say why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And I always put up signs so people know this is on purpose. I'm
Yeah.
not just lazy. And I always make little paths around it so it
Yeah.
kind of looks a little bit artistic, but yeah, mini habitats. Everybody
Yeah.
can do a little one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mean I often say in the UK, and I'm sure in Canada and America it's even bigger, but in the UK, like people's gardens make up, I think it's something like 10 million acres. And it's like
Yes.
that's an incredible, like huge resource that you could, hand over to nature without actually, having to have, these conversations with, public land or agriculture or you're not even touching on those areas of land. You're just like, this is land that's in the custodianship of, just small individuals. And and even if you sort of thought, even if it was like 10% of that, that's still a million acres, and you can have, that's a huge resource. So yeah, I think amazing, like you said, the thing is to sort of just not get stuck in those feelings of despair, not rely on the social media, the mainstream media, and to realize that there are these amazing people out there who are, creating these movements, and you don't even have to come up with the ideas. You just have to sort of follow
Yeah.
their lead and be a link in the chain to have an impact and make a difference.
And knowing that every small thing matters,
Yeah,
right? Sometimes a friend of mine says, she said, big change doesn't sometimes come in all at once,
yeah,
with trumpets. It comes in on soft pause,
yeah,
right? Little bit, every little thing you do, every little habitat you create, every letter you write to your government representative. There are people on the planet who don't have the privilege of
yeah,
doing those things, whose
yeah,
homes are being swallowed up by the ocean,
yeah,
who are living with bombs raining down on them.
yeah,
So, those of us that have the privilege of a life where we don't have those things happening,
yeah,
we have to use our privilege
yeah,
for
yeah,
good.
yeah,
And
that's
there's
it.
always people that also want to do it. And then we find ourselves in a community. Oh my gracious. And this is where our strength is.
Yeah.
This is
Oh,
where our power is.
oh,
To
well,
stand together for
yeah.
the earth, right?
Yeah, that's it. I think that sounds like we're sort of at a point of of wrapping up there, Elizabeth. That's
Yes.
a really profound way to leave it. But if you do you have anything else, any sort of last words or that are on your heart, or a message to leave people with before we wrap up today? And obviously I will put all the links that they can connect with you directly, and find your things as well in the podcast description.
I think what I'd like to do is end with the last poem that's in the book.
Oh, yeah, that'd be lovely. That'd be lovely.
And I will just say one thing, because there's a reference here that we haven't talked about. Um, in some old cultures, they used to call the language of the birds the green language. And the
Okay.
language of the birds is one of the chapters in my book. So when you hear the green language, you'll know what that means.
Yeah, but
All righty.
lovely.
300 million years ago, on the supercontinent of Pangaea, life conspired with rock, sea, and sky to dream a grand experiment. And so it follows that, like the flow of Fundy's tidal bore, the green language of our young Yvonne, and the sweet whisperings of my beloved weeping willow. I too am Pangaea's dream. Yes, I, the patience of the seed who trusts the dreamer's growing need to gestate in her womb of dark and thus distill a silent spark of wonder. Rend asunder this empirical nightmare scheme. Yes, I, the thousand winds that blow, I, the silent evening glow, I, the pebble in the stream, I, the sunlight's constant beam, I, the rainbow in the sky, I, the tears of those who cry, I, the bursting leaves of spring. I, the song the green woods sing.
Hmm.
Yes, I am Pangea's dream. Whose dream are you?
Oh, amazing. Amazing. Oh, thank you so much for your time today, Elizabeth, and for sharing your beautiful poetry with us, and yeah, just your amazing wisdom. I am so grateful for your time today, and yeah, I I encourage everyone to look you up and to stay connected, because the most important things at this time are that we hold on to active hope and community.
Yes, yes. And I wish everyone who's listening the most wonderful of days. And thank you so much, Fiona, for your generosity in keeping this conversation going.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you so much for listening to the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I truly hope this conversation has brought some hope and inspiration into your life. I would love to have these messages ripple out across the world. So if you can, please share this episode with your friends, leave a review on your favourite podcast player, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I would love to hear from you, so please feel free to connect with me on the links provided in the podcast description. But most importantly, thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. But don't forget to simply get out there and enjoy the natural world.